What's up, YouTube? Valentin the Mad here, and today I have something special for you. A discussion video with Albin, the developer of Crisis Response, about his game. He recently released a free demo that you can try out, and this video is a discussion of the current features and what's planned for the future. Also, as you can see, it's the first dev discussion video on the channel, and I hope there will be more of those. So without further ado, here it is. Okay, hey, welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself.
I am Albin, and I'm developing the game Crisis Response. It was previously Blood and Bullet, but now it's Crisis Response.
So for those unfamiliar with the game, what is Crisis Response?
At the moment, it's a quite simple demo with not that much gameplay, pretty much focused on gore and apprehending suspects. But the future of the game is going to be a SWAT simulator, you could call it, a special police unit simulator, where you will go into buildings and apprehend suspects and try to liberate hostages with the least amount of damage done as possible.
So at the moment all we have is just the gore and some basic shooting mechanics, right?
Yeah, that's the demo right now, demonstrating the action features that will still be in the full game, but it will also have the other things around it.
Okay, so what are the other things? The big gameplay features.
What I'm planning for is to, on one side, have micromanagement of the team, of the operators that you use in the action. But then also I'm planning to have the negotiation side of solving these barricade crises. So you will have a character who is the negotiator, who will try to reach a peaceful solution before you go into the action phase, if at all necessary.
Nice. I did not know that, and it sounds actually pretty awesome. So, about the situations, is it going to be based on a map or something like this?
What I have planned is a campaign that will have a number of missions, and each of the missions will have their own map, essentially. And what is currently the sandbox, the current demo, I will keep in the game as well for a sandbox area where you can play around. And that part of the game, I think, might have more procedurally generated levels, or levels that you can sort of give parameters for how they will look.
Okay, sounds good. So, let's say the damage model and gore aside, what are the other enhancements planned for the action phase?
Compared to now?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I have more plans for the gore system as well, but...
Yeah, I'll get to that in a bit, but are there any plans to expand on...
Yeah, currently, for those who don't know, the gameplay is two-dimensional. The game is 3D, but you only travel in a two-dimensional plane.
Yeah, and the characters are also two-dimensional, right?
Yeah. And that's the trade-off I made for the gore. We'll get to that later, yeah. But I have planned for making movement possible in the third dimension as well. I think it's kind of necessary to get a really good tactical aspect to the game. Right now you can only go in one direction, back and forth. If I could add the third dimension to that as well, you would have many more ways to get through a level and many more ways to plan the execution of an action phase. So I think that is something I will need to do in the future as well. And also I plan to add more levels to a building. In the demo level, there is only one level. I would like to add stairs and multiple stories to buildings so that you have that extra dimension as well.
Okay, so is cover going to be a thing?
Cover, yeah, definitely. When I have the movement in the third dimension, I will also be able to add obstacles that you can take cover behind and that you can move around. And I can also add more doors to rooms so that you can have more than one entry point to one room. And of course you have the teammates as well that are driven by the AI. You will be able to command them, much like in the SWAT series games, to execute actions on your command. So you can set them up on doors and make them enter rooms at the same time from different directions and such things.
Okay, sounds good.
These are all plans, and I'm just one guy, so it will take some time to get them into place, I think, and we'll see where it goes. But that's the plan anyway.
Okay, so now let's get to the fun part. The game
Yeah.
has an advanced damage model right now with organ simulation. Can you tell more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the gore system sits on top of what I call the physiology system. And the physiology runs the internal organs. And basically, let's start at when a character is considered dead in my game. That's when there is brain death. And the brain needs oxygen to function. And the physiology system makes the blood transport oxygen in the body and to the brain. So each character has a amount of blood that they start with, and when they get injured they will lose blood, and when they lose blood they lose the functionality or the means to transport the oxygen to muscles and to the brain. So as they bleed out they lose consciousness, and eventually they also stop breathing, and brain death will occur when they have been without oxygen for some time.
Okay, and if I get it right, you also have other organs mapped. Other than the brain. You can hit the heart or the lungs, right?
Yeah, the heart and lungs are involved in the physiology as well. When a character walks, there is an amount of work being done from the muscles. So this creates a demand for oxygen for the muscles, and the character needs to breathe with the lungs to provide this oxygen. And the oxygen is distributed into the blood by the heart, so both the heart and the lungs must be working for the character to stay conscious. And as the character performs work, walking or running, the amount of oxygen they need to keep running is increased, and the respiration rate will increase to provide more oxygen so that they breathe quicker. And the heart will also pump faster to provide the additional oxygen needed. So this makes a difference when someone is hit somewhere so they start bleeding. The heart rate will actually affect how quickly they bleed out. So someone who has been running when they get hit will bleed out quicker than someone who was just resting or standing still.
Oh, sounds really cool. Now let's talk about the visual response. Right now we have pretty amazing blood spilling mechanics. You have this very accurate spilling, you have the blood puddling. Are you planning to expand on that, or as for the spilling effects, that's all it's gonna be?
I have some further plans. Currently, there are textures covering all the surfaces of rooms, and when a blood particle or a blood drop lands somewhere, that will be painted into the texture at that position. So that's the reason it looks quite responsive to where a blood drop lands. There will be blood. I have more plans for the puddling effects or the pooling effects to make it look more realistic and more responsive. It's not exactly where I want it now. Pools can form in kind of weird locations sometimes, and well, it's kind of divided into two things. Pooling is something that is separate from when blood drops land on the floor. So when a blood drop lands on the floor, or rather if several blood drops land on the floor at the same position, it will sort of look like a small puddle, but it's a separate thing from the real puddles that I spawn. And when blood drops land in the same position, sometimes it can look a bit funny. But overall, I think it's pretty good.
Okay, now let's talk about the wounds.
Yeah, when people get hit, I also update the textures on their limbs and body parts. And this is also connected to the ballistics model I have for the bullets. We can talk about that as well later, but it's kind of connected to the gore as well.
Yeah, so what I was wondering if that's gonna be improved, like maybe blood-soaked areas on the body, or maybe blood running down the character instead of the particle effect. When you have, instead of seeing a particle effect come out from top of the character, then kind of run down, just see it run down the body, and then if you have a gap between the body and the surface, to see the dripping effect.
Yeah, that's an idea I have as well. I haven't gotten around to implement that yet. I've been developing the game for quite some time, on and off actually, and I have had more of blood update effects on the limbs before in earlier versions, but I don't have it at the moment. I plan to add it back so that blood can run from wounds and update the textures so that that you can see blood running down on the body parts as well.
Very much looking forward to that, have to
Yeah,
say.
I can imagine.
And how about maybe dismemberment? Is it at all planned, or maybe shotgun from close range to the limbs or the head?
It's not really planned. What I can do is add dismemberment at the positions that are already joints of the body. It's a bit more technically difficult to break limbs in other parts than that because, well, there is a lot of work to be done to make that work. So that's not planned really at the moment. But I could have limbs dismember at the already existing joints.
Yeah, you know, maybe just from a very close range, obviously, not from far away. Don't wanna overdo that, you know.
So I have both entry and exit wounds, and what I also have in the model is internal wounds. So when a bullet hits a body part, there is two things that I do with the body part. I have both a permanent cavity that I add as a wound, and it has a volume for how big it is. And then I also have a temporary cavity, which gives what I call the shock value of a hit. So a bullet hitting a body part will have a shock value to it, which may render the person unconscious if it's too great. That could be kind of like a pain threshold if you want. And this shock accumulates on the character, so if you hit someone multiple times, they will get more shock added to them. But this also subsides over time. And the permanent wound, that remains in the limb, and that's used for calculating how much they bleed. So if you hit a body part many times, there will be a larger volume of wound inside of it, which causes bleeding. And this, by the way, you can heal up as well, to some extent, with items you can equip the operators with. They have what's called gauze, which you can essentially push into the wounds to make bleeding stop.
Okay, it sounds really good. Really like the pain system. You don't see it all too often, but it sounds very exciting.
Thanks.
Okay, so one thing I'm wondering about is the animation responses. Right now we have the health state, kind of a shaking when the character is wounded. Then we have the seizuring on the ground state, which looks pretty awesome, but not so much in between. Is there going to be any limping? Maybe conscious characters on the ground?
Yeah, that's an area where I have a lot to do still. I have a bit of a problem with I don't have a good animation system at the moment, so it's difficult for me to animate the characters like I want to. I have still to find a good way to animate the characters, and when I do, I will add lots more animations, because like you say, there is a lot lacking now when they are wounded. Not really much response to it. And since I have so much detail in the physiology and gore systems, I really want that to be visual as well, so that people can see what is going on with the characters. It's a shame hiding that away, where it's not visible. So I want to have animations for wounded states, like limping when they are hurt. And I also want them to be able to get back on their feet after they have fallen down. The shock values I mentioned. When shock is too great, they will fall down from pain. But they should be able to get up again when the shock value has subsided. That's what I want anyway.
That sounds great to me.
So currently I have animations in the conscious state for pretty much the legs, and then I animate the arms separately because they need to control the weapons. So it works in two different ways right now. And then I have animations as well when they are unconscious, when they are ragdolls essentially. And there I can control the whole body, since it's in a different state when it's a ragdoll. So you can see some animations like the seizuring and the cramps. Those are on the ragdoll. And then they can also grab at body parts at some times.
Oh yeah, I
If,
noticed him grabbing the leg, which looked pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. And I'm planning to add more of those as well, grabbing the different body parts. And those only play, of course, when they don't have brain damage, because, well, the seizuring plays when they have brain damage, but not the grabby animations where they grab things. So the seizuring occurs when they have slight brain damage, but not too great.
And brain damage can occur from lack of oxygen too, right?
Yeah, there are two types of damage to the brain. There's plain trauma when someone gets hit by bullets, and then there is this secondary one that comes from lack of oxygen. Right now I've set it at 30 seconds, so if someone is without oxygen for 30 seconds, then they are dead. And that's for gameplay purposes, of course. It's a bit short, but it works for the gameplay. And also when they suffer brain damage, the heart and the lungs can shut down from that reason. So slight brain damage may cause failure of the lungs and heart, so that they die from lack of oxygen as a second effect to that.
Okay, sounds good. I was wondering, for how long have you been working on the game?
Like I said, I've been working on it on and off. At the current state of the game, working in Unity, I've been at it for almost 1.5 years now, I think. And I've been working full-time on it for 6 months now. Before that, it was just on and off on weekends and evenings. But the idea for the game, I've had much longer than that. I've released 3 demos before on my own engine. I used my own engine for the game before. And that was in development for 5 years, I think. I started that 5 years ago. But the idea is even older than that, from when I was in school, actually. So the idea, I would say, is probably 10 years old or even a bit more.
Well, I have to say
So-
that yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was very much inspired by games like Soldier of Fortune 2, which was the first game I played with gore in it that made me kind of interested in that aspect of games. And then I've also been inspired a lot by the Police Quest and the SWAT games. Police Quest 2 I played, and also SWAT 4 has been a great inspiration.
I played also from SWAT 2, I played a bit of SWAT 3. And SWAT 4, of course, I played to death. Spent hundreds of hours in this game. It's pretty
Yeah,
amazing.
it's really good. Also, I can say that I don't want to have a game which is only about blood and gore. That's the reason I'm bringing in the negotiation parts as well, and the team management. It's to provide a contrast to the gore, because I think if you have something that balances out against the gore and the violence, it will make it feel more worthwhile, I think. Say in SWAT 4, it's very authentic. And I think that one thing it does very well is that it puts you in a situation where you feel forced to use violence, even though the purpose of the game is bringing people into custody without harming them. That's the ultimate goal, I think.
Yeah, of course. Gore is just a part of the gameplay. It shouldn't be everything the game has.
No, exactly. So that's what I'm going for as well.
Okay, I have to say it sounds really good. So right now I played the sandbox, I really enjoyed it. It feels very solid in my opinion. So what are the release plans? How are you going to go further from here?
I'm not sure where it's going to go, but the plan is to reach a level of quality where I can enter early access phase. Currently I've been working out of my own pocket, so I can't keep doing that for any time. I will need to get some money from somewhere eventually, and I plan to do that by entering early access. And right now, as I release the sandbox, I'm going to start working on a prototype version, which will contain the other gameplay that I mentioned. So it will be the full feature set, but not in a polished state. There will be perhaps one of these campaign missions in the prototype. And I think it will be when I've released the prototype that I will try to enter an early access stage or go up on Steam Greenlight or what it may be.
Okay, I really wish you luck with that.
Thank you.
I'm very much looking forward to playing the full prototype version. I don't think I played any game with negotiations before going in, and I really like this idea.
Yeah, I've been quiet about it for up until now, really. I just mentioned it in a small news post, but I haven't really been talking about it. I think it will be quite a unique feature, so I hope I will be the first one to do it as well.
Alright, so is there anything else you want to say?
I'd like to thank you for this opportunity, because I think it's a really great chance for me to reach out to some people who might be interested in my game, so thank you for that.
I'm very happy to have you in. Thank you for coming.